Hello everybody, and welcome to the Rust Solana tutorial. So, as the title suggests, we are going to dive into building on-chain with Solana using Rust. So, maybe you're a big fan of Rust, and you wanted to learn it anyway, but the odds are pretty good that you are even here in this channel to learn Rust so you can develop on Solana, and that day is finally here, ladies and gentlemen. So, without further ado, I want to just quickly mention the Solana Cookbook. This is a great site to go to get started. Tons of helpful documentation. I really can't stress these core concepts enough. You're going to need to know these at least at like a basic level to understand what's happening with the code. So give this a look. And of course, you got to have Rust installed. So I recommend just going with this. Install Rust in Cargo, do the Rust up script, and take care of business. So as long as you've got Rust and Cargo and Rust C and all that stuff, and you kind of breeze through this stuff, then you're good to go. And we're going to install the Solana CLI. And that's going to allow us to conduct all kinds of business with the Solana network. Actually, more than one Solana network. There's going to be the dev and testnet and the mainnet. So here you can see, and I got this link in the README if you guys need to get at it. It's also going to be in the description of this video. And basically, you just copy this here and use it to install Solana. Now, I've already got it, so obviously this is going to be a little bit different, but it does take a minute to download, so I'm going to fast forward this part here. Okay, and as you can see, there was really no output here. And there should be a little bit more output when you first install this, but I think it just realized I had it already and it didn't really say much. But anyway, you should be able to run the command Solana and you'll get this massive help menu here. And these are all the different commands that you can run on the CLI. So we're actually going to take a few minutes in this first video and talk about what the CLI does and how it relates to building Rust on Solana. And in the next video, we'll get into actually doing the Rust stuff. So really quickly, I wanted to mention, if you haven't read through any of this documentation yet, the biggest thing to understand at this point in this tutorial is that Solana is based on what's called accounts. So a wallet is an account, a program that you write is an account, there's accounts that store data, there's accounts that don't store data, and that's all described pretty well in here. And there's some details about them in this description here. So when you first get the CLI, what you need to do is you actually need to configure it so that you as a client are a recognized Solana account. So I've done this on my computer already, so I don't get any warnings about it. But when you're trying to conduct different Solana commands, it will actually ask you, to generate a key. And that looks just like this. We just type Solana keygen new. And now I've already got one, right? So it's refusing to overwrite it. So I'm going to go ahead and add the force flag just to show you guys this process. So originally it's going to ask you for a BIP39 passphrase. And this is completely optional. If you want to protect your, recovery phrase or you want to protect your private key, this is advisable. For now, I'm going to skip, just enter it for none. And you can see that it spits you out a recovery phrase right here. Now, don't try to steal anything from me. I've only run this on the DevNet, and this is going to be changed by the time I publish this. But obviously, it goes without saying that you're going to want to keep this somewhere secure, especially if this is going to be production development. You're going to be pushing this up to prod. You're definitely going to want to keep this somewhere low-key. But pay attention. It says it wrote a new key pair to this home directory here, config solana id.json. So this is where our key is living right now, our private key and our public key pair. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to type Solana config set -- key pair, and I'm going to set it equal to that key right there. And you see we got that confirmation there, and you can see config file right there. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to establish a connection to the network. You can see right here I've already connected to the DevNet, and it recognizes it in the WebSocket. Now, to do that, though, what you're going to want to do is do Solana config again, set, and this time it's URL. And then we're going to, you can use whatever network URL you want. This is the DevNet right here. If you want the testnet, and I'll include these in the README as well. If you want the testnet, it looks like this. And then the mainnet looks like this. But we're going to be going with DevNet. So we'll walk that back. We'll copy over the DevNet. And like I said, we just hit enter, and there you go. It looks the same as it did before because I already had the DevNet, but now you're good to go. So now you've generated a key pair. Your device is running as an account, right? Like this key pair represents your device being recognized as a Solana account. And since we set it as the config, we set our key pair here. Now we have our client configured and we're a recognized account and we can do business on the network. So the first thing you can do is just do Solana logs. And as soon as you hit that, you get all the logs live from the Solana cluster. This is everything coming from the DevNet right now. So everybody running anything on Solana, it's coming through right here. And so when you're building stuff and running it, you're going to want to actually use some Linux commands like grep and awk to grab out some of your program IDs and recognize which one's going to be yours. But we'll get to that. So you can Control C out of this because it's going to just keep running. And there's a couple other cool things you can do with the CLI. So since we're sitting on the network here as a client, we can actually query it for some information. Like let's get our balance. Obviously, we just created this account, so our balance is 0 SOL. But since we're on the DevNet, you can actually do an airdrop, if I can spell it right. And I don't know, let's airdrop 5 SOL. So I cut ahead real quick because I guess it doesn't really like you trying to airdrop 5 SOL, but 1 SOL works fine. So if you do Solana airdrop 1, you can see the signature there, and then you can see that we got 1 SOL. So if we go ahead and do Solana balance, we're going to have 1 SOL. And why don't we just airdrop another one? Why not? I mean, it's the DevNet. Let's get a little bit more money going in here. 2 SOL. And again, that's our balance, of course, right? So that's pretty interesting. You're going to want to do that, obviously, before you start developing because you need Solana or what's called LAM ports, which is the smaller incremental value. You know, 1 LAM port is equal to a tiny fraction of 1 SOL. And you're going to need some of that money to pay what's called rent and to pay different fees to deploy your applications and to run transactions and things like that. So you need a little bit of SOL to do a little bit of development, especially on the mainnet. So moving on now, there's a little bit more we can do with the CLI, and it all comes down to just hitting these different commands and just trying different stuff out. And I really encourage you guys to just go nuts, right? Like just try different stuff. This is the total supply on Solana. You can see the total circulation. This is obviously all DevNet, so we're looking at everything DevNet related. But just feel free to just grab any of these commands. They're pretty friendly, and if you screw something up, they give you a pretty good response about what you did wrong, and often just the help menu spits out. So you can see a lot of super useful stuff on here. But all right, so now that we've got this set up and we're good to go on the CLI, I just want to quickly talk about this Docker file I have here. So this is just an Alpine image with glibc provided by this Frol Vlad person. So you can find this on Docker Hub. And I really just walked through the same steps that we kind of showed in this video. So I added some dependencies, just some Linux packages for Alpine that we're going to need. You need this one for Solana, obviously NPM and Node. And then we install Rust and Cargo and Solana. So the point of this image is really to have a Docker image that we can use to conduct business on the Solana CLI and deploy our applications. And this is a really big piece of actually Dockerizing Solana apps. So we'll probably come back to this real soon. But in any event, this is actually available on my GitHub. I mention this every video. The description has the link. Go take a look. But in the next video, we are actually going to start developing some Rust and deploying it on Solana. So let's party.